Aaron Mitchell bought a home for peace and privacy. But when HOA President Amanda Blake built a playground 12 feet onto his land, she didn't realize who she was messing with. No warnings, no lawsuits. Aaron turned his backyard into a federally zoned tactical training site, and when she called the sheriff, he shook his hand. She broke the boundary. He rewrote the rules. This isn't just HOA drama, it's property justice. Before we deep dive into this interesting story, subscribe to our channel and tell us where you're watching from. Share in the comments below. Some men build fences to keep things out. I built mine to keep peace and it worked until she arrived. 3 years ago, I bought my home on the edge of a small, quiet development tucked into the hills of eastern Oregon. No traffic, no sirens, no screaming kids on scooters. Just the wind in the pines and the occasional deer that wandered across the property line. I picked this house because of the land, 3/4 of an acre, fenced, clean title, and far enough from the HOA to be left alone. The listing even bragged, no common easements, fully private. I had it surveyed twice, once before escrow, once after I moved in. I wasn't paranoid, I was precise. I worked in aerospace design for 20 years. Boundaries matter to me. Margins of error, tolerances, angles, those things save lives. So when I walked my line with a metal detector and a set of flagged stakes, I knew exactly where my world ended and everyone else's began. And for 2 years, no one bothered me. Then Amanda Blake showed up. She moved in 2 houses down. White SUV, perfect yard, brochure, smile. A real estate agent who just wanted to bring some energy to the neighborhood. That's what she said the first time I met her. I was trimming my hedges, and she walked over in a sun hat like we were already friends. "We're forming a new HOA board," she said cheerily, waving a clipboard. "Just looking to do some good. A little cleanup, maybe a few upgrades for the families." I nodded, politely, but I felt it then, something off in her tone. Too smooth, like someone already rehearsing a courtroom statement. By that winter, she was HOA president. Within 6 months, she'd rewritten the newsletter, proposed security cameras for the cul-de-sac, and pushed through a beautification budget with more zeros than anyone remembered approving. At the 4th of July barbecue, she announced her big idea, a brand new community playground. "For the kids," she said, like she was campaigning for mayor. "We have a strip of common land along the east side. Perfect spot. Right where the trees are thin." That strip of common land? It was directly behind my backyard. I didn't panic at first. After all, my survey stakes were still there. Orange flags marking a clean line. But then the emails started. Upcoming construction. Equipment arrival. Please be aware of temporary noise due to playground installation. One morning, I heard beeping. Heavy machinery backing up. I stepped onto my deck with a coffee mug in hand and stared at a skid steer dumping gravel inside my fence line. My flower bed was gone. 3 wooden stakes marked the outline of what looked like a platform. And right it, 2 men were digging a trench. For what? I didn't know, but it wasn't for anything I approved. I walked out to the crew and asked who gave them permission. "The HOA," one of them shrugged. "Which lot are you working on?" I asked. "This one," he said, pointing behind him. "Wrong," I replied. "This is my property." They looked confused. A little too confused. Like this wasn't the first time someone had told them that. I called Amanda that afternoon. She answered on the 3rd ring. "Oh, hi. Everything okay?" she asked, like nothing was wrong. "There's construction equipment on my lawn," I said flatly. "Well, technically, it's part of the Greenbelt expansion," she replied. "The survey shows it falls within the HOA managed perimeter." "No," I told her. "My deed says otherwise." She sighed. That kind of sigh people use when they think you're being difficult. "Look," she said, "I understand boundaries can be confusing, but this is for the kids. Surely you don't want to stand in the way of community progress." I didn't answer. Not then. But I felt something shift inside me. Like a dial turning. This wasn't a misunderstanding. It was a land grab wrapped in playground paint. And Amanda Blake just crossed a line she didn't even know was mine. I wasn't the type to make noise. I believed in order, in process. When something's off, you don't yell, you document. So when Amanda brushed off my concern about the playground overlapping my property line, I calmly printed out my deed, marked it with the original boundary coordinates, and hand-delivered it to her front door. She opened it wearing that same artificial smile, the one that never quite reached her eyes. "Oh, this again," she said, glancing down at the paperwork like it was junk mail. "I've seen the other survey. Boundaries can be flexible, especially in a shared community. I'm sure the kids will appreciate your support." Flexible. I reminded her this wasn't about support. It was about trespass, about rights, about land that legally belonged to me. But she just nodded like I was being dramatic and closed the door with a thank you. I'll review this tone that felt more like a warning than a courtesy. So I called the county. The man on the phone was polite, efficient. When I asked for the permits filed for the playground construction, there was a pause. Then a click of the keyboard. Then another pause. "I'm not seeing any recent filings for development under that HOA, he said. "Are you sure this is a sanctioned project?" I was. Unfortunately, I followed up with an email to the HOA board, attaching deed scans, photos of the property stakes, even time-stamped GPS data from my land surveyor app. I heard nothing back. No response, no meeting invite, no clarification. Then, 3 days later, I got the letter. Notice of non-compliance. Continued obstruction of approved HOA development plans will result in fines of $150 per day per violation. Failure to remove unauthorized barriers may result in legal escalation. They were fining me. Why? Because I'd placed 4 small orange cones along the edge of my flower bed to mark where the excavators had crossed onto my land. They called it obstruction. I called it evidence. And the swing set. It kept going up. Bit by bit, they bolted together the bright red steel frame right where my daisies used to bloom. The kind of swing set you see in public parks, overbuilt, noisy, and utterly out of place on a formerly private backyard boundary. A few days later, I caught Amanda leading a small group of parents behind the homes, showing off the progress. I stood quietly at the edge of my deck. Amanda saw me. She didn't wave. She just said loudly, "Some people don't appreciate community investment, but thankfully, most of us do." I was officially the problem neighbor now. The whispers started at the mailboxes, on neighborhood walks. One woman with a stroller smiled weakly and said, "I hope it's not too much of a disruption for you. It really is for the children." Another man, someone I'd spoken to once about lawn care, barely made eye contact. He muttered, "You know how HOAs are, best to just let it go." Let it go! I had never once pushed back on this HOA, never attended a meeting, never objected to dues or landscaping guidelines, or the endless holiday banner votes. But I was done being passive. This wasn't just about swings and mulch. This was about principle, about a woman who believed smiling while stealing made it okay. So I did what Amanda never thought I'd do. I went silent. No more emails, no more confrontations, no more cones. I took pictures. I collected documents. I archived every letter, every HOA update, and every time-stamped video of the crew crossing the boundary line. Amanda thought she'd won. But I wasn't retreating. I was preparing. Because when someone starts a war over 12 feet of land, they're not building a playground. They're building a battlefield. And I don't lose on my own land. The moment Amanda crossed that line, my line, I stopped reacting and started investigating. Some people argue with noise. I fight with facts. I pulled out the fireproof lockbox in my closet, the one I hadn't touched since the move. Inside, the title plat, the certified boundary survey, my purchase agreement, and the high-resolution topographic overlay the seller had included for peace of mind. I laid everything out on my kitchen table like a battlefield map. The documents were clean, dated, notarized, and perfectly aligned. The boundary line was unmistakable. It ran straight through the edge of the swing set. I even still had GPS coordinates from the surveyor's markers, accurate down to the inch. I needed to know what they had filed to justify what they were doing. So I got in the truck and drove 30 minutes to the county zoning office downtown. The building smelled like paper and dust, exactly the kind of place Amanda probably hoped no one would ever bother visiting. The woman behind the desk raised an eyebrow when I asked for the public permits filed under our HOA's parcel group. "Looking for anything specific?" she asked. Playground installation, I said. New structure, development, community space. Anything in the last year. She clicked through her database. I could hear the hum of the ancient printer behind her. There's nothing recent under that HOA, she said. Nothing? I leaned forward. No development requests. No easement adjustments. No common space filings. She frowned. Only thing on file is a utility request from 3 years ago. No structural or land use permit since then. It was quiet for a second. I felt that slow, cold wash of vindication crawl up my spine. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't difficult. I was being targeted, and Amanda Blake was bluffing with an empty hand. Is there someone who can verify that? I asked. She thought for a second, then waved over an older man from a corner office. Gray sweater vest, coffee in hand, slow step. He introduced himself as Marvin, retired city zoning officer, now part-time permit consultant. I laid out my case, showed him my survey, showed him the HOA map from their newsletter, the one with the bright yellow playground zone stamped across the back of my lot. Marvin studied both, flipping pages slowly like a judge in deliberation. Then he pointed to the map. This right here, he said. They used the county plat lines, but they didn't file for public structure use. And see this overlay? He traced my survey. Your legal description is superior. This is your land. No question. He leaned back and gave a small chuckle. They built on your lot, son. I asked him how bad it was for them. Well, he said, if they didn't file permits, that playground's technically a code violation. Could trigger fines, insurance liability, maybe even force a teardown if someone complains loud enough. Good, I said. I'll keep that in my back pocket. As I left the building, I didn't feel angry anymore. I felt clear. Amanda had counted on no one challenging her. On me being too quiet, too private, too disconnected to fight back. But she didn't know who I used to be. In my old life, I designed safety systems for high-speed rail. If a decimal was off, people died. My entire career was built on spotting errors that others missed. Now I was applying that mindset to my property line, and Amanda Blake had just failed inspection. That night, I printed everything. 3 copies. 1 for my records, 1 for the zoning office, and 1 I tucked into a black folder labeled contingency. The line wasn't just drawn now. It was documented. And Amanda had no idea that I had just started flipping the script. By now, I'd gathered everything I needed, every survey, boundary certification, and official zoning silence that prove Amanda's playground sat 12 feet deep into land she didn't own. Most people faced with this kind of trespass would have gone straight to a lawyer, slam a cease and desist on the HOA's desk, file a lawsuit, make it messy. But I don't believe in messy. I believe in surgical. Amanda thought I was just some ex-engineer clinging to his daisies. She didn't trials I still had friends in systems most people didn't even know existed. One of those friends, Danny, ran a tactical training company. Not military, not private security exactly, but something in between. They trained first responders, K-9 handlers, drone pilots, even CERT units for wildfire zones. Their operations were mobile, pop-up, and fully legal with the right zoning declaration. Over lunch, I slid the folder across to him. He flipped through the photos. The deed. The permits they didn't file. His grin spread like a match catching. Let me guess, he said. You want to lease it? Just a slice, I replied. 12 feet wide, long enough to cover the incursion. He nodded. We can run drills once a week. Nothing overnight. K-9 work, drone flight patterns, breaching simulations. Light stuff. And loud, I added. He smiled wider. 2 weeks later, I submitted a zoning adjustment request to the county under the official name, Private Tactical Demonstration and Training Use, Low Intensity. Attached were Danny's credentials, insurance, and a proposed lease agreement detailing all safety protocols. Because it was temporary use on private land and didn't include any permanent structures, it passed without issue. No hearing. No objection. Just a stamp and a filing fee. Amanda didn't even notice. Until the signs went up. Restricted entry, live training zone, authorized personnel only. Metal posts, black lettering, and one small badge logo from the K-9 division that Danny worked with. I placed them along my rear fence, exactly where the swing set shadow ended, and my property line began. The first drill was a Thursday morning. I sat on my deck with a coffee, watching as two SUVs rolled up quietly. Out came 4 handlers, 3 dogs, a drone operator, and a field medic overseeing the exercise. They ran a tight session, dogs doing search and bark drills, the drones sweeping in slow arcs overhead, someone simulating field communication protocols near a fold-out operations board. From my side of the property line, it was professional, controlled, respectful. But to Amanda, standing behind the playground gate with 2 clipboard moms, it must have looked like a breach in the very illusion she'd tried to sell. That afternoon, I got the call. "This is highly inappropriate," she said, skipping any greeting. "There are children nearby." "So am I," I replied calmly, "and I'm on my own land." She scoffed. "You can't just turn a backyard into some war zone." "Actually, I can," I said. "County Zoning Code, subsection 11.3.1 temporary training operations allowed on private land with proper permitting and insurance." There was silence, then a sharp breath. "You'll hear from the board," she snapped. I didn't respond. I just smiled and said, "Looking forward to it." The drills continued, every Thursday, like clockwork. I made a point of keeping everything above board. No debris, no prolonged noise, no blocked access to the playground. But I also made no effort to hide what was happening. Amanda tried to act like it wasn't bothering her, but the cracks were showing. She walked the perimeter more often, sunglasses on, lips tight. She'd stop when the drone buzzed near her end of the property, pretending to check her phone, pretending not to notice the signs. Parents started asking questions. One day, a mother approached while I was watering my tomatoes. "I heard there's training happening back here," she said carefully. "Yes, ma'am," I said. "Private lease. All above board." "Oh," she paused. "Is it safe?" "Safer than a playground built without permits," I replied, then smiled. "And a lot more legal." She blinked, then nodded slowly. Amanda never approached me in person after that. Not once. Not during the drills. Not during the afternoons when handlers walked the zone with canines on leash, running them through scent drills near the edge of the playground fence. The irony was rich. She built a playground on my land, thinking she'd claimed territory. But in one quiet filing, I turned her sandbox into a federally recognized restricted space. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't break a law. I just drew the line back where it belonged, and made damn sure everyone knew I owned it. It was a Tuesday morning when I saw her. Amanda marching down the sidewalk in full regalia, tailored blazer, manicured fury, and a manila folder tucked under one arm like a sword. Behind her trailed 2 HOA board members, one of them the treasurer, the other a nervous dad who'd been quiet since the playground mess began. And just behind them, the county sheriff's SUV pulled up, lights off but presence loud. I was already on my deck, mug in hand, watching. The air was still, except for the hum of a drone tracing its pattern over the training zone. Below it, 2 canine handlers ran drills with harnessed dogs, giving sharp hand signals and receiving perfect, wordless obedience in. On the edge of the zone, the restricted entry signs flapped gently in the breeze. Amanda stopped 10 feet from my property line. Sheriff McCall stepped out of the SUV, tall guy, buzzed hair, a slow gait that told you he wasn't in a hurry unless he had to be. Amanda moved toward him fast, like she was expecting backup to fall in line. "That's the man," she said, pointing directly at me. "He's weaponizing this neighborhood. This is an unlawful operation right behind a playground." McCall looked past her, toward me, then smiled. "Hey, Aaron," he said casually. "Didn't know the drills were today." I raised my mug in greeting. "We rotate Tuesdays sometimes. Easier for the drone guys." Amanda blinked. The other board members exchanged a glance. "Sheriff," she snapped, regaining her voice. "He can't do this. There are children here. This is unsafe." Loud. Aggressive. "There's no way this complies with zoning." "It does," McCall interrupted gently. "He filed all the right paperwork. County approved the use. Insurance is in place. And," he gave a small chuckle, "our department actually trains with that same contractor. Good people. They know what they're doing." Amanda looked like someone had just cut her power mid-sentence. "But the noise, the liability." Ma'am, McCall said, his voice firming just enough to make her flinch. This is private land, not common area. You're standing on public sidewalk, but if you step 1 foot into that zone, you'll be trespassing. You could hear a pin drop. Across the street, a curtain twitched. A neighbor was filming, maybe the same one, who'd nodded at me the week before, but hadn't said a word since the playground construction began. Amanda turned slowly toward me. This is retaliation, she hissed. No, I said. This is jurisdiction. Her lip curled, but her voice dropped. You're making this ugly. I didn't build anything on someone else's land without permission, I replied calmly. That was you. The dogs barked in the distance. Sharp, clean, trained. Sheriff McCall stepped between us slightly, not because he needed to, but because he was done watching the scene unfold. I think we're good here, he said. Just a reminder, this land's restricted, and he's well within his rights. Amanda didn't argue. She just turned, fast and brittle, and stormed back down the sidewalk, heels clicking like warning shots on pavement. Her entourage followed, saying nothing. I took another sip of coffee. Across the way, the curtain closed. But I knew they saw it. All of them did. For the first time since Amanda had pushed her will across my property line, her authority had cracked, in public in front of witnesses, under the weight of the one thing she couldn't control, the law. It took her exactly 6 days to regroup. After the sheriff's visit and the very public reminder that I wasn't breaking any laws, Amanda did what petty tyrants always do when the rules don't work in their favor. She tried to change them. An email blast hit inboxes under the title, Emergency HOA Meeting, Community Safety Discussion. Thinly veiled, but everyone knew what it was about. They held it in the clubhouse, small beige building near the tennis courts, usually reserved for holiday potlucks and fall pumpkin nights. But that night, the parking lot overflowed. People came, phones in hand, faces curious, some ready to take sides. Amanda stood at the front like a queen preparing to redraw her kingdom. She wasted no time. Due to growing concerns, she began. The board has proposed an amendment to the community charter. This change would prohibit the use of residential lots for any form of tactical or emergency training deemed a disturbance or safety risk. The crowd murmured. One man actually whispered tactical like dogs to his wife. Amanda pressed on. Furthermore, we are proposing that any land within 50 feet of common property be restricted from hosting outside agencies without board approval. That's when my name finally left her lips. I'm sure many of you are aware of the situation behind Lot 48, she said tightly. This is not a personal attack. It's a matter of preserving peace and safety for the families who live here. I stood up. Are you trying to override county zoning laws with an HOA vote? I asked calmly. This is our community, she replied. And we have the right to protect its integrity. Not when it conflicts with state-recognized property rights, I said. Not when the land in question is privately owned, properly leased, and zoned for legal use. A few heads turned. Amanda looked rattled, but pushed forward. If this motion passes, she continued, the board can issue a cease order on any activity violating the new charter language. I didn't argue. I just walked to the front, set a black folder down on the podium, and opened it slowly, 1 page at a time, for everyone to see. Before you vote, I said, you should know what you're voting to cover up. Inside were printed copies, an archived email from Amanda stating the playground was going up regardless of red tape. Screenshots of internal board texts complaining that the permit delays weren't worth dealing with. A county inspector's note showing no playground filings had ever been submitted. A map proving my training zone was not just on my deeded land, but outside the community-controlled greenbelt entirely. I've already submitted these to the county zoning office, I added. CC'd the city council and the local news desk, just in case. Amanda's mouth opened, but no sound came out. The treasurer leaned over to her and whispered something. She stiffened. The nervous dad from earlier slowly slid his chair back, avoiding eye contact. The vote didn't happen. They adjourned with the kind of silence you only hear after a trap has been sprung. 2 days later, Amanda received a formal cease and desist from the county. Unauthorized development, improper use of community funds, potential civil exposure. By the end of the week, 2 board members had resigned quietly. Another sent me a message that just read, Didn't realize how deep she went. Sorry I backed her. I didn't reply. Amanda had tried to rewrite the rules, but I'd written the receipts. I wasn't looking to go viral. I just wanted the truth in daylight. I took the footage from my drone. Clean, steady flyovers that captured the entire sequence of Amanda's playground being built. Post by post, foot by foot, well over the legal line. I layered in audio commentary from Marvin, the retired zoning officer, whose calm, gravelly voice broke down the violations like a documentary narrator. This is the original property stake. And this playground structure sits 11 feet inside private boundary lines, confirmed by deed and plot survey. No drama, just facts. I uploaded it to YouTube under the title, HOA builds illegal playground on private property. Watch what happens next. Then I shared it to a few neighborhood forums, a couple Reddit subs, one post on a community Facebook group. It lit up in hours. The comments came first. This is wild. She thought she could just take the land? I'm an attorney. This guy is 100% in the right. Playground pirate HOA president strikes again. The signs. The restricted zone signs are legendary. Then came the reposts. A HOA watchdog subreddit pinned it. A real estate accountability Twitter thread quoted it with the caption, "How to take down a corrupt HOA without raising your voice." By the next morning, it hit the local news. They ran a segment titled, "Homeowner Fights HOA with Tactical Lease." They crossed the line, literally. They used drone clips, screenshots of Amanda's emails, blacked out names, but everyone knew, and a brief interview with Marvin on background. The fallout was instant. Neighbors who had stayed silent started reaching out. "We had no idea she was doing all this. I'm pulling my support. She's not who she pretended to be. How do we get a recall vote started?" And Amanda. Her real estate business took a direct hit. Yelp and Zillow pages flooded with reviews that weren't even about sales. They were about ethics, or lack thereof. Clients canceled open houses. One listing dropped her as agent within 48 hours. The phrase "playground pirate" became an inside joke across multiple HOA Facebook groups. But it wasn't about humiliation. Not for me. It was about record. About proof. Amanda had weaponized silence, backroom politics, and a fake smile. I countered with light, lens, and law. And in the court of public opinion, the verdict was clear. I hadn't just drawn the line. I'd shown the world what happens when someone crosses it. She resigned from the board entirely within 48 hours. 2 weeks later, her house was quietly listed. No open house. No balloons. Just a sparse online posting by a different brokerage, buried at the bottom of the listings. The new board, leaner, cautious, and far more transparent, sent a message to the neighborhood. "We are reviewing all prior projects and implementing a full audit of HOA spending over the last 2 years. Transparency will be our new standard." But what meant more than any policy change were the quiet knocks. The neighbors who came by, not with excuses, but with apologies. "I'm sorry I didn't speak up sooner. She fooled a lot of us. We thought you were just being difficult. You weren't. You were right." I didn't say much in return. I didn't need to. Amanda had built her legacy out of press releases and paved lies. I built mine out of paper, patience, and pressure. In the end, I didn't bury her. She built the playground. She poured the concrete. Absolutely. Here's the final chapter of your story. Her house went up for sale, with no open house and no fanfare. A simple, private listing. A new realtor. No balloons. No welcome home banners. No smiling tours through a legacy she never got to finish. The story was out now, not just mine, hers too. And in this neighborhood, reputations stick like wet paint on old siding. Within a month, she was gone. Moved to another state. Arizona. I heard. Somewhere flat. Somewhere with no memory of the signs. The drones, the lines she crossed, and the man who quietly pushed back. I didn't throw a party. I built a fence. A new one, 8 feet tall, cedar boards, black steel posts capped with brushed chrome, clean, deliberate, custom-engraved boundary markers, embedded every 10 feet, etched with GPS coordinates, and a single line of text beneath each one. Proffer pen line confirmed. Do not cross. Symbolism? Maybe. Message? Absolutely. The K9 team still trains once a week. Not for spite, just because the lease remains in effect and they like the space. Sometimes they run drills, sometimes they just bring the dogs for scent tracking and perimeter sweeps. Quiet, respectful, efficient. No drama. A few neighbors even come to watch now. One of them, an older man who'd once sided with Amanda, approached me during a drill. "I always thought you were overreacting," he said. I didn't answer. He looked at the fence, the dogs, the signs. Then back at me. "But you were right, you didn't escalate. You just enforced." I nodded once. That was enough. A few days later, another neighbor asked me something different. "Do you ever regret it? All of it?" I paused. "No," I said. "I just drew the line and kept it. Because that's what this was always about. Not revenge. Not power. Control. Boundary. Legacy." Amanda tried to rewrite the rules. I didn't scream. I didn't rage. I didn't fold. I answered her invasion with law. Her pride with process. Her manipulation with steel and silence. Now the signs stay not for safety. For memory. A quiet monument to the day the HOA thought they could push 12 feet too far. And learned what happens when a man decides his lines aren't suggestions. They're final. Ever had an HOA cross the line? Or a neighbor who thought your silence meant surrender? This is just one backyard story. We've got dozens more where justice hits harder than a lawsuit. Stick around if you believe property rights still matter, and that revenge is best served within code. Because the next battle might be on your street. And we never show up without the paperwork.